Hey everyone, welcome to Mark Ellis Unplugged, where today we are really unplugged with Mark Ellis himself. I'm Theresa Winters with Faraway Places Travel, and I've had the pleasure of getting to know Mark over the past few years, and I thought that this would be really fun to really dig in a little bit deeper into his passions, why everyone just loves and is inspired by him. So we're going to get right into it. Mark, thanks for being on your show.
Feels a lot different being in this seat, let me tell you.
Yeah, I'm
It's
excited
just the hot
about
seat
this.
over here.
Yeah, so you look good over there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I want to start with just something really simple. I want to take you back to where you grew up and how you think that shaped what you're doing today in real estate.
Oh, man. So I grew up in Port Huron, city of Port Huron, obviously my entire life. We grew up, I wouldn't say that we grew up poor because we had everything we needed as kids growing up, but we certainly didn't have anything extra. So growing up, we actually lived in the projects for, I don't know, from the time I was born until I think 7. And then after that, we ended up moving to a house, which we lived in until I moved out.
What area was this?
This was all north end Port Huron.
Okay.
At the time. And so, so I kind of grew up there. So anything that you wanted really extra, shoes or, Jordans or whatever, you had to hustle to get it. So
Yeah.
I learned at an early age that I had to hustle and rake leaves and shovel snow and do odd jobs to try to get the things that I wanted in life that I knew my parents didn't have the funds or the means to do. So it was, you just learned at a young age, like you gotta get out there and you gotta work.
Yeah, I can totally relate with that. I wouldn't say we were poor either, but if I got an IOU hoodie or sweatshirt, I knew my parents really had to put in the extra hours for that. So I can relate to that. If we had heat in the house, we were happy.
Yeah.
So I can relate to that as well. Tell me about what your parents did and how you saw them work and hustle as well.
Sure. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom, raising 3 kids. I was the youngest of 3. I've got a middle sister and an older brother. So I'm the youngest. And then my dad worked at Chrysler. So he worked at a few different jobs, actually. When I was real young, he worked for the railroad on the trains, and that was cool. He would take me on the train sometimes, and I got to drive it, and I just thought that was
That's
so
so cool as a kid.
Yeah, this big old locomotive, But then he got a job at Chrysler, and so he would work, basically he commuted to work every day from Port Huron to Sterling Heights. And I remember at the time thinking, God, I don't ever want to do that. That's like, who the hell wants to get up and drive an hour every day to go to work? And my dad would always be stressed with the traffic. And if you know my dad, his temper isn't very long. So him dealing with traffic, he was pretty much pissed off every day. Yeah. But now I do that. I do that drive. And so I commute, from Washington Township out to Port Huron. And actually, I don't mind it because I'm a multitasking person. So I maximize my time in the car.
I envision you always on the phone.
So I'm always on the phone. I'm checking emails at stoplights, stuff like that. But I try to maximize my time. And then on the way home, it's kind of a way of unwinding before I get home.
So kind of just spinning off of that, do you have a routine daily during the work week, starting from when you get up to the drive home?
I do. So I just started recently doing, so in the morning before I even grab my phone or do anything, I write down 3 gratitudes. Nice. I write down some affirmations, and then obviously start my morning routine, shower, brush my teeth, all that stuff. And then I time block. So my entire day, my entire week, my entire 2 weeks, I'm booking out 2 weeks now, is time blocked. And I time block personal time as well as business time. And I've just started doing the personal time because I used to let my business run me every day. But now I time block it all. So I know what I'm doing every day, every minute of the day, and I'm on time. I respect people's time. I'm never late. If I'm late, call the police. Something's wrong. But I time block a lot.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was just having that conversation with my son last night as we rolled up to an event. We were early, and he wanted to wait in the vehicle. And I said, if you're on time, you're late. We're walking in. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to instill that in my kids as well. I hate being late.
I love
If I'm
that.
on time, I'm late.
100%. And, I'm respectful of other people's time. You know what I mean? And so I tell people that all the time. If you want to waste your time, that's fine. Just don't waste mine because my time is my most valuable asset.
Yeah. So tell your viewers maybe something that's not obvious about you. We know that you hustle. We know that you like to have fun. We know that you're a great person. You're a great mentor. What is something underneath that maybe would totally shock your viewers today?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is being behind camera. I hate this. I know it. Chris makes me look good, and he does a great job editing, and he makes it look like I'm a professional at this, but I've never been one to be behind camera. I don't take a whole lot of pictures. It's just not my thing. I know a lot of people like to document their life, but I hate being behind camera. I do. I did it because I was telling my agents, we had a meeting, and I said, hey, we need to be doing more social media, video. And all of my agents are like, I don't like being on camera. I go, well, I don't like being on camera either. I said, I tell you what, I'll do it. And that way you guys have no excuse. And so I kind of lead by example that way. So I did it. And of course, some of my agents have done it. Some of them haven't. But yeah, I just try to lead by example.
No, it's totally relatable. Owning a travel agency and my agent's the same thing. We can post pictures of a destination all day long. But really our clients want to see us behind that camera.
Yeah.
It's personable. They're seeing us talk and putting, action to what we're doing instead of just booking stuff online. We're out there, exploring the world, understanding our destination. So I get that totally.
Yeah. So that'd probably be the first thing. I think the second thing is I actually can play the piano by ear.
Wow.
Certain. I'm not a professional. I'm no Beethoven.
Stop the cap.
But I can play the piano a little bit, and I actually learned that because my grandma had a piano at her house, and we would go out there all the time. We'd spend summers out there, and we'd go out to her house, and she lived on Atkins Road, and at the time, we lived in North End, Port Huron. Driving to Atkins Road was like, that was the country. Like we're going to the country. It was only a 10-minute drive.
Right.
But as a kid, you thought it was just so far. And she had a piano there, and the only music she had was she had a hymnal from church. And so I'm like playing church music because it's the only thing that I know, because it's the only thing she has. But I just kind of played around with that, and so I can do that. I haven't played in a long time, so I probably need to brush up on it. But
Very cool.
yeah,
we have a lot in common. I grew up playing the organ at my grandmother's house.
That's funny.
The hymn book as well.
Yeah.
If we brought the piano out for the next podcast,
You know what? I'll tell you what, Chris.
I think the viewers now they want to fact check.
So, here's the funny thing. People may not know this. Chris is the behind-the-scenes guy that makes everybody look good, but he also used to be a rapper. So if Chris would rap, I'll play the piano, and we can have a little duet going. What do you think, Chris?
Hey, I'm down. I think. Obviously, I'd bring a lot of viewers to the table.
He's very humble. If you haven't noticed, Chris is very humble, and he makes it easy.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Little spin-off.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So if not real estate, what?
What's crazy? So growing up, my entire life, I thought I'm going to be an attorney. Like from the day I was born, probably up until I got into high school, that was, I'm going to be an attorney, I'm going to be an attorney, I'm going to be an attorney. And it wasn't that I wanted to do that job. It was that I just equated attorneys with people who had money. And we didn't have a whole lot of money. So I'm thinking, I got to get to the money, and these guys got a lot of money. So, right up to high school. And then I got into high school and I started researching that career field and realizing how much schooling was involved. And I'm a hands-on person. I'm not a go to school and look in the book and learn that way. Show me one time I can do it type of thing. And so I'm like, I'm not going to school for that long.
And I feel like it's continued homework.
Yeah.
You're constantly in the books and learning the new laws and what's changing.
Yeah, that wouldn't work for me.
Yeah, so I'd seen previous podcasts that you loved being in a suit as a younger kid. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about that.
So I owned one suit growing up. It was actually a mismatched suit. It was a jacket and some pants that didn't match, but I made it work. Because again, we didn't have a whole lot of money to deal with. I think it might have even been my brother's jacket and my pants, something like that combo. But my mom, I talked to my mom about this later in life, and she said, you always wanted to dress up as a kid. Why? And I said, I think I wanted to because again, I had this mindset of people who dressed up made money, and I wanted to get to that. So maybe if I dressed up, I would get to that faster. I know it's kind of a weird process to have in your mind
manifesting
at 6 or 7, but it worked. And then I also think first impressions are everything. My dad always instilled that in us. You can only make a first impression one time. So you'll never be overdressed in a suit, but you could be underdressed if you're not.
Sure.
So I just always try to present myself in a way that is classic, and you get that first impression. So
Yeah, I think you've carried through since you were a little boy.
yeah, I appreciate that.
You always look sharp.
I appreciate that.
Always
Thank
look
you.
sharp.
Yeah.
So I saw in your story today on Instagram something along the lines of failure being more important than financial gains.
100%.
Talk to us about maybe some of the biggest failures that you've had that have catapulted your career.
Gosh, I've had a ton of failures. I mean, I think especially when you get into, let's say, so before this business, I was in the car business. And so in the car business, I didn't know anything about selling cars. I had a guy that came to me and said, hey, I think you'd be great doing this. You should do it. I told him no 5 times. And then finally my dad's like, well, if you're not going to go to school, you better do something. And I'm like, all right, I'll try this car thing out. And it ended up being one of the best moves I made in my life. But then during that process, like, working at that car dealership, I made a ton of mistakes. I didn't know. They go, yeah, go sell a car. I go, how do you do that? And so I was telling the customers the wrong things. I was telling them it had a warranty when it didn't, and then these problems would come back. And then they would land on my boss's desk, and then he would call me in his office and say, you did this wrong. And my boss was an old school car guy. You did not want to make him mad because he'll tell you how it is really quickly. So, he would just tell me, how he would call me all kinds of names that I don't even want to talk about on the show, but that was just his way. That's how he managed. He managed kind of with an iron fist. It made me strong. It gave me, resilience and obviously that thick skin to kind of go through anything that I, needed to go through in life. So I think that was probably, there was definitely some failure in the car business early. And then in the housing business, again, same thing. They gave me a desk and a phone and said, go sell real estate. And I'm like, what do you mean? I've never sold a house before. And Joe Bauer, who was my broker at the time, kind of took me under his wing. And he went on my first few appointments, but he's busy running his own business. And so it was kind of like, you just learn. I'll tell you one of the things that I messed up on, and it's a very common thing to mess up on, is I was writing an addendum for one of my clients. And in the addendum, I wrote, how the addendum should have read was seller to pay X amount of dollars towards buyer's concessions. We were basically asking the seller to help the buyer with some closing cost. And I wrote it that the buyer was to pay for his own concessions. Mm-hmm. The other agent on the other end knew that it was wrong, didn't say anything. We get to closing, and the buyer's like, why do I have to come up with so much money? And I'm like, I don't know. That's weird. So I started looking at the statement. I go to the other agent. I'm like, oh, my gosh, I wrote that addendum wrong. Can we just change it real quick? And he's like, no.
Of course not.
And I'm like, are you shitting me?
Because he's working for his client.
So that mistake, of course, I'm never going to make my client pay for anything. I paid for it. It was $1,500, but I'll never do it again.
Right.
So sometimes you have to have those mistakes. You have to go through those growing pains. It might cost you a little bit of money, but you'll never do it again.
I was listening to Masterclass, and it was the CEO of Spanx, and she said growing up, her father, every single day at dinner, asked her and her siblings how they failed that day.
Yeah.
That was what he wanted them to do.
Absolutely.
Fail.
Yeah.
It's so great.
The lessons, I just read a quote. It said, experience gives you the test first and then the lesson after. And I think that's what we do every day in life.
Yeah, every day.
You're learning, and if you're not learning, you're not growing.
Right.
So I don't attest to know everything in the world. I always learn from other people. I'm a sponge. Like I said, you show me something one time, I can pick it up pretty quick.
Nice.
But I don't know it all.
Right.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that I was in real estate in Florida.
I don't even know that.
I did it for
me?
a hot minute. Yeah, it was one of those things. I'm like, I'm 24 and cute. I can do this.
Absolutely.
It seems easy. And I failed the test multiple times. It's very hard. And again, I was in my 20s and maybe not as focused as I needed to be.
Sure.
But for those people that are considering getting into this profession and think it could just be something easy to get in because they don't need to go to college, what advice can you give them with that thought process?
I'm going to give them some advice that I wish somebody gave me, and that is your database will either be how you eat or starve. If you don't have a good database and the information that you're putting in that database is not good information, it is, whatever you put in is what you get out of it. But you have to build a database because that database, your sphere of influence, is what's going to either make or break your career in real estate. That would be the first piece. The second piece would be find a mentor. Right? Find somebody that has done it, who's been there, who's been through the mistakes, so that they can put you on a fast track to not make those mistakes. Joe Barr was my mentor. He showed me not only the real estate business, but the rental side of it. He showed me the investment side of it. He showed me the leasing side of it. He is a wealth of knowledge. I could call Joe right now and say, hey, 123 Main Street, what do you know about it? And he'd be like, oh, I was in that house 10 years ago. It had this, it had that. The basement was a little wonky. Like, he just is an encyclopedia for real estate. And he knows about all these houses. And I'm like, how the hell do you remember? But that's helpful for me, especially when I was investing and buying a lot of houses. I could call him and say, hey, what do you think of this? Should I buy it? Should I not? And he would be honest. And I think that is very helpful. That's very helpful. And then the last piece of advice is put the customer first. The money is truly a byproduct of what we do. I've never ran my business chasing dollars. I've ran my business helping. And the more people I help, the byproduct is I get paid. Right. And if I do a good job, they may refer me to somebody else where I can get paid. But I need to take care of that customer, because if I don't, somebody else will. And I want to be the best at taking care of the customer. I want to take care of them better than anybody else. So that would be my advice.
What's your favorite type of customer?
One that's committed to the process.
And how do you figure that out first?
Well,
because I have that same dilemma.
Oh yeah. So commitment to me means we're going to sit down before we look at houses, before I list your house, if we're listing it, and we're going to talk about expectations. We're going to talk about your goals. We're going to talk about, if this happens, what's plan B? If plan B happens, what's plan C? I always want to be a couple steps ahead. So once I've got that feel that, hey, this customer is committed to either buying a property or selling their home, okay, the next thing I want to know is how do you prefer to communicate, right? Do you want me to communicate with you once a day, once a week? Do you want an email? Do you want a text? Do you want a phone call? Older people tend to want phone calls. Younger people tend to want a text. I want to communicate with you in the way that you want to be communicated with, so it makes it easy. And then I think the last piece of that is I want somebody who respects my time as I respect theirs, right? So don't send me on a wild goose chase looking at 20 houses. We're going to narrow that down, right? I want you to ride by those houses first before we look at them. I want you to ride by them twice, once during the day, once at night. Things change at night, right? I want to make sure that that's the neighborhood you want. Because when we sell a house, we sell the house from the outside in, right? We sell the neighborhood first. We sell the community. We sell the schools. Because most people that are moving into a specific neighborhood are doing it for a specific reason. I want to be close to family. I want to be in this school district. I want to be here. I want to be there. So I sell a house from the outside. And if I've done my job selling it from the outside and I've listened to my customer in that pre-interview process that we did to make sure they're committed, by the time we go into those houses, they're going to buy probably the first 5 houses they see, one of those houses, because I've done a good job initially. And that's how I explain it to people is, hey, I can save you a lot of time if you just give me a few minutes to kind of figure out what you're looking for, so I can match exactly what you're looking for, whether it's selling your house or buying one. So I just take that time in the beginning to really know my customer, and that way when houses come up, I'm very good at marrying people with properties. So when a house comes up on the MLS, I'm like, oh, this property would be perfect for so-and-so, because I remember in the interview what they said was important to them. Right. And then I call them, hey, we should go look at this house. And we go look at it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
In-depth questions.
Yeah, I like it.
So you grind hard, you work hard. You've talked about your schedule being minute to minute. And I'm going to kind of like pull in travel in this conversation. At the end of the day, when you've been working hard for 6 months, I know you like to get out of town here and there. What are your top 2 favorite go-to places and why?
Well, my top place so far in terms of something that's very inexpensive and easy to go to is I have a cabin up north. And so that's like, if I have some free time, I want to jump on the highway and be there as much as I can. It's just a much slower pace. What it does is it actually forces me to slow down because I can't just run and go show a house. So that's been imperative to my mental health and keeping me, sane and grounded. But as far as vacations go, I want to go to Bora Bora. And I think you and I have talked about that before. And I know that's like all day travel and you got to plan more than a few days there. That's probably a 10-day stay. But all the pictures I see and everything, that's like my number one destination.
So that's on the list. You've been to Miami a few times, all right?
Been to Miami a bunch.
Some of that, yeah.
Yeah, and I love sun. I love water. I love outside. If I'm up north, I'm usually outside doing something, snowmobiling, side by side, and all that.
Yeah, I feel I can relate to that too. Like just getting out of my own setting.
Yeah.
I can't pick up work or the phone to
Yeah.
deal with local things. So our time is about up. Is there anything else that you want to throw at your fan base to let them know while you're in the hot seat?
I'll tell you, being the interviewer is a lot easier than being the interviewee.
You think?
Yeah. So I give anyone who's been on my podcast, thank you. I appreciate you coming because this has definitely been unique. But I really appreciate you coming up with this idea because I think it does give people a little insight into who I am and how I got to this or whatever. This podcast truly started as just a way for me to show agents that they can be on camera and it be okay. And it's evolved into so many other facets. We've had some pretty cool guests on, and I want to continue that. I want to provide good quality content that people are engaging in. So I guess what I would say is anyone listening, thank you for continuing to follow us and support us. And, hit the like, hit the subscribe. We're on everywhere you can listen to a podcast, from YouTube to Spotify to iHeartRadio. All social media platforms, we're there. So just look us up.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
Hey, no problem. Thanks, Theresa.
All right, guys, we're done with Mark Ellis Unplugged. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for his next episode.
Christopher.
21 minutes. Not bad.
That was perfect.